Make sure that you're clear on your purpose, number one. And whatever that purpose is, don't deviate. It will be tempting. Someone will come to you and say, we're funding climate change. Now you're a climate change expert. Tomorrow you're doing this. Tomorrow you're doing that. It is very tempting. And I think also another one was when we now entered the communities. Like I said, that's really been an important part of the work. We didn't start in communities, we started in health facilities, eventually in schools. But the community element, expanding our portfolio and our reach, and ensuring that from a grassroots level, people are influencing the health system, people are able to be part of the health system. Their voices matter, and we're bringing them to the table to contribute and shape their health system on a local level and beyond that. That was also a very exciting thing for us and continues to be. So I think those are a couple of times when I would say we've had genge moments of, wow, okay, this is exciting, and it's helped us to also validate that we are achieving what we set out to achieve.
Very, very, very helpful perspectives. Thanks a lot for sharing those. Right? I mean, I know I can imagine what that feeling would have been like when the government reached out to you to say, can you come lead this, right? Or when all of a sudden people you're able to get everyday people, right, to become a part of something you're doing, and you can see the changes they are making in the society or in their communities in their own little ways, right? In their own little way. I think that, yeah, I can kind of envisage what that feeling is like, and yeah, I can relate with that. Thanks a lot for sharing those. Now, we have just about 7 minutes, right? So that we can just bring this to a close. And I have like maybe 2.5 questions, right? Depending on how this flows. The first is around I am a Nigerian, right? I have lived the better part of my life, right, in Nigeria before I moved abroad. And I know how difficult it can be for ladies to lead things, right? Especially when you're dealing with it's a very patriarchal kind of society. It's evolving, don't get me wrong. It's evolving, things are changing, right? But I know how difficult can be. And I'm wondering what your experiences have been like, especially partnering with government and government officials on one hand. On the other hand, outside of that, are there other, challenges that you've had to deal with, right? Including people, people challenges, finding talent, retaining talent, and keeping them compensated, especially in the days when, you probably don't have a lot of, cash
Yeah.
and sitting in the bank, right? A lot of challenges, but let me just leave you to that, and then I'll
Yeah,
pick up
yeah,
from
that's great. Thank you. So let me start with the second one. In terms of challenges, yes. In the early days, it was hard. Um, I've been told I look younger than I am. I'm a female, and so those are just on the surface. Before I open my mouth and say anything, those are
That's not necessarily a
in
bad
this
thing,
when
though.
you're trying to get things done. It can be. It depends on who you're trying to
It can
interact
be, I
with
get
and
it.
all that. But at times, it can be detrimental because people are judging you before they even engage with you. Right? They've already made up their minds that this woman wants to come and tell us how to do things here. That kind of approach. And to your point, Nigeria is tough for all of the reasons that you've stated. And so for me, it was again coming back to the reason why I started all of this. I knew that this was my purpose. I knew this is what I was supposed to be doing. And so I knew I wouldn't fail. It was hard. There were a lot of rejections, a lot of no's, a lot of people who were not interested in what we had to say and what I had to say. But for me, it was about not giving up and knowing that there will be one open door. There may be five rejections, five no's, but at least one of them will open, one of them will come through. And I have to say honestly, and maybe this is the God factor, we have found, and I don't want to be cliche and use the word champions again, but we have found champions within government who have been the best kind of partners you could wish for. I know people like to talk about Nigerian government and say, they're not doing anything, those people, this and that. But honestly, there are such amazing people working within government systems all over this country. And we have been blessed to interact with them, partner with them, and work directly with them. And yes, there are people who come with their own agendas. There's the corruption factor, there are all of those things. But we have been blessed to actually find people who want to make a difference, who want to see the work succeed, who want to work with us to meet our mutual goals because we're all working towards improvement of healthcare at the end of the day. Um, and so that has been a huge factor for us as well. That helped overcome the fact that, yes, I'm a woman, I may look younger than I am, and all those other things. So it's not been easy, but it's we've been really, really blessed to be able to have those people help us champion the work and push for us, even when we're not in the room, even when we've not written a letter. Um, but like you said, the environment is complex. Nigeria is complex, and other challenges, definitely the talent thing you spoke about is hard. We have suffered a major, major brain drain, as we all know, in the last few years, especially in the health sector. Our professionals generally have gone, our teachers, our bankers, our lawyers, many of them have left the country, but the health sector is not exempt. We've lost so many health workers, so many people in the public health space, which is where we operate. So it's hard because the talent pool is smaller. And also, in the time we've been running the organization, when we started, the naira was 150 to a dollar. It's basically 10 times that now, 1,500, 1,400. So when you look at that pressure as well, the fundraising that is required for us to do what we need to do has had to be constant and always ramped up. But also compensation for team members has to be adequate. People have to be able to live comfortably and support their families. And so, again, talent retention and things like that become a challenge when you're dealing with limited budgets and an environment where inflation is outperforming interest rates and on investments and things like that. So it's not been easy, dealing with talent. But like I said, we have been so blessed from day one to have amazing team members. Um, and I mean, we don't have time now, but if I tell you the story of how some of the people who worked at Drasa and still work at Drasa came to Drasa, it's really just amazing. Truly, God has blessed us with talented people who have the passion and capacity to help us deliver on our mission. And I think other challenges are things like, dealing with different vendors and quality of certain things that we need for the work that we do, and also burnout because the work is hard and it's a lot. And we have been a small team, growing organically for many years. And so in the beginning, we were all doing many things. I was fundraiser, accountant, manager, leader, everybody was doing 20 things at once, as you normally see with entrepreneurs and startups. And so needing to be intentional about prioritizing staff well-being, my own personal well-being as the leader, pacing ourselves. Those are things that have been challenging because at times the work is urgent and important, and you just want to pour yourself into it, not realizing that you will soon run out of steam. So I think those are some of the challenges we faced.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Time will not allow me to ask of these and of that and of these and of that as a follow up to that. But just to the point you're making around, how you've attracted people, I would have loved to double click on that, but yeah, we don't really have the time. And I want to appreciate the fact that you've given me 1 hour, and I want to try and stick to that. One final question, maybe two final questions, right? I will ask them together, and and we can just wrap up, right? No, it's not. One is a question. One is more like a final word from you. So the question, Niniola, is if you have to do all this all over again, if you have to start it all over again, right? What would you do differently? Now you've had a good run, right? Nobody can take anything from your flowers. You've earned them and all of that. But looking back, are there one, two, three things that you just feel like if I have to start afresh, I will tweak this, I will tweak this, I will do this differently. Things that will help us arrive even faster than we've arrived, right? One, and then your final thought to people who are out there who probably hoping and praying and trusting that someday they'll be able to start what you started, right? What is like your final word, your encouragement to them, right?
Okay, great.
And that would be it.
Thank you for those two questions. I think it's interesting, especially as we turned 10 last year. I did a lot of reflection over our journey to this point, and this question you just asked of, what would I do differently, came up in my mind. And there are a couple of things that I think I would be more intentional about and that I would do sooner. One definitely would be prioritizing a diversified funding structure from the beginning. Like I said in the very beginning, we were mostly funded by individuals. And just like with everything else, after a while, people move on. The story no longer resonates with them. They still know the name, they remember what she did, but financial support is not there. And so we had to, as that was waning and coming down, we had to quickly start looking for other sources of funding, and that has been sort of the rat race since then. So I think for us, one thing that I would have done differently is from day one, be very, very deliberate about having a diversified funding base. Local philanthropy, individuals, international philanthropy, corporate partnerships, long term sustainable financing like this endowment and other approaches, making sure that everything is mixed so that the day that someone announces they're not funding anymore or this one is shutting down, we can still continue. And we're not dependent on external or we're not overly exposed to external factors. So that would be one thing. I think another thing is I would invest in our communications earlier on. In the first few years, we didn't have a communications person. We were so busy trying to fill technical roles and do the work that we were not telling our story. And we do such great work and we have done such great work, but without clear messaging and clear engagement, both social media, traditional media, and all other forms of communication, it's almost like the work is invisible. And so being able to tell our story, tell why what we do matters, what makes us different, what success looks like for us, having those things from the very, very beginning, I think is something I would do differently. We ended up investing a lot in it later, but it's something that we should have really started from day one. To make sure that we're visible, because a lot of times people say, oh, I know what she did, but I didn't know there was any organization in her memory. And so that helped us to realize that, whoa, we have a gap in our operations. We need to make sure that we're telling our story better. um, I would also, we did this somewhat, but I would strengthen even more our operational systems. Again, we invested a lot in the technical capacities, making sure we had people who were PhDs, doctors, nurses, veterinarians on the team, people who have the technical knowledge to do the work that we do. Um, and we did that in the early days without investing in HR. So again, we didn't have a comms person, we didn't have an HR person in the early days. So making sure that those structures were there from day one is something I would do differently. Um, and I think those are the main things I would say. If I was to speak to someone who wanted to embark on this journey now and start, there are two things I would say. The first is be very, very clear on your purpose and your why. If you're a person of faith, pray to God, be directed, be led, um, because it's going to be a hard journey. Let me not sugarcoat it, right? And the way you overcome the challenges is when you know that you can already see the end because you've been told that this is what you're supposed to do. So make sure that you're clear on your purpose, number one. And whatever that purpose is, don't deviate. It will be tempting. Someone will come to you and say, I have funding for this youth development project, and you're supposed to be focused on child health. Or, well, that's even close. Maybe you're supposed to be focused on something completely different. And they say, oh, no, come and do this work. There's money here. And then you go and do it. Then another person will come and say, oh, we're funding climate change. Now you're a climate change expert. Tomorrow you're doing this. Tomorrow you're doing that. It is very tempting. But just as much as you're going to get people saying no to you, you have to practice being able to say no to other people, because there will be times when it will take you away from your mission. It will take you away from your purpose. And you don't want to miss whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing because you're distracted with something else. So stay focused, know your mission, and then stay focused on it. And then the second thing I would say is protect your personal health. When you're passionate and when you're really committed to something, it can be easy to sacrifice. It can be easy to work late nights, work weekends. I did all of those things in the early days. Before I had a family, it was okay. But once I had a family, it became a challenge because now there's sacrifices involved. So find a balance and put things in place to prevent burnout, to make sure that you can show up for the people that matter to you in your life beyond the work, because the work will always be there and tomorrow's another day. So those would be the pieces of advice that I give.
I'll drink to those. I'll drink to those. Thank you so much for not just sharing, right, but sharing from your heart, right? Because I have a feeling those came
Yeah.
from very deep places, right? And thanks for pulling them out. It's been an absolute delight talking to you this afternoon, just hearing your story, right? And for all that you've shared. Thank you so much. Hey, thanks a lot for taking the time to watch the podcast. We are super thankful for you taking that time and investing the time to learn. We hope that you find the story inspiring, and beyond that, that you've been able to articulate one or two things that you want to do differently in your own entrepreneurial journey. May I encourage you to please like, subscribe, comment, and please share the word within your own circle of influence, especially within those that you think are on the same entrepreneurial journey with you. May I also encourage you to please, beyond subscribing to our YouTube channel, follow us on our other social media platforms. That means a lot to us, and we can see that that helps us to track that we're making some progress and so making some impact. Thanks a lot once again for taking the time to watch, and to see you on the next episode.